all of you who are in right now. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Rethinking Legal Ops. It's a podcast where we talk about how law and technology are integrating to change the way we see and practice law. My name is Ashwarya. I'm the head of legal at Speed Legal, and I'm your host today. Today, we have a very special guest, Miguel. He is the General Counsel at Paybyrd, a really fast-growing, large fintech company. And he's also a professor of law at the Nova School of Law in Lisbon, Portugal. Really excited to have you here, Miguel.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I'd like just to say thank you for this invitation. For me, it's a pleasure to be here with you all, and I hope you will enjoy this session. Thank you.
Yep. And like all our episodes, this episode is sponsored by Speed Legal and Sweet Legal Tech. Check out their work for more exciting legal tech and digitization of law type of work. All right, so let's jump in. Miguel, really excited to hear a little bit more about what you're doing at Paybyrd and a little bit more about your professional journey.
So I have like a traditional background in law. So I have the traditional Portuguese undergraduate level in law, a bachelor's degree by Nova School of Law in Lisbon. Then I thought, so I'm a private lawyer. It's important to mention that usually my expertise is on commercial law, banking and finance. Then I enter in a big law firm in Portugal. I work as an intern, doing the master's degree at the same time on commercial law. And then when I finish my master's degree, I have some invitations in the academia to continue studies, so the PhD level. And I accepted. It took me 7 years because it's hard in Portugal. We have still like the German traditional way to do a PhD, like a huge thesis, like 1,000 pages. So I had like 7 years of PhD. But I was working as a lawyer during that time as well. Then when I finished my PhD, I thought that it was a good way to start in a university as a full professor. So I had like 2 or 3 years without just for in the academia. And then I was invited as well by the European Commission to perform as a national expert on financial aspects. Basically, what I do is like I do assessment of the quality of transpositions of European Union directives in Portugal as a national expert. But then I realized that what I really do is like the professional part. So I entered again in the market my expectation was to go again to a traditional law firm as an in-house counsel or a lawyer. But then I had this opportunity. If you asked me 5 years ago if I saw myself in this position today, I would say no. But if you ask me now if I want to change, I say no. I really enjoy what I'm doing here at Paybyrd. I'm a general counsel. I do everything about related to law, but I also do, and we can talk this session. I do more than just law, and so I have other functions as a general counsel more than that.
Okay. Thanks. That's a very interesting journey from academia to now also, doing, working in fintech and also working at a smaller company. Started out smaller, now it's growing, of course. But as you were talking about, you have to do stuff that's even more than law. Just a little bit curious about, how many hats are you wearing right now, and what are the types of things that you do?
It's very challenging. Even law-related stuff, it's challenging because in the morning I can do like labor law, an employment agreement, and then afterwards I'm working on the contract, and afterwards on tax, and then on finance stuff. So it's hard for us in a small company. It's not as small. We are more than 50 people, but the legal department we have 2 people. So we are small, and it's hard because we have a lot of areas that I'm not comfortable with because I'm my expertise are limited to certain areas. So it's challenging. I'm keeping up to date with everything. But the difficult part is, for instance, to finish a meeting now, and then I have to go to the university and teach family law for marriage, and then I return here and I need to think about a certain client that is upset with a proposal that we made. So this type of the changing of subjects is the most difficult part. And there are classes that I teach in English, like capital markets I teach in English, family law I teach in Portuguese, introduction to law in Portuguese, fintech in English. So it's crazy sometimes to do all together, but with a certain type of, you need to be very, very strict and very rigorous with your time. And legal technology will help us, in my opinion, with time. How can you actually manage your time the better?
Yeah, absolutely. And wow, that sounds insane, and at the same time just amazing. The amount of mental flexibility required to juggle all these different subjects, and to also not just know them, to have a level of expertise in order to be able to advise your company and to teach students. Like, this is not like basic level of knowledge. These are a lot of subjects.
Yes, and I have 2 kids. So to be a father and to be present with your family, it's very important to have time for them. And actually what I do, I have like 2 or 3 hours in the day that I'm focused on my family. It's okay for me to go to bed later on, but there will be like 3 hours on the day that I'm fully focused on them. It's very important also to have this life balance with your family.
Absolutely. Very important. And you make it sound like easy, as if you've got 40 hours in your day and you're doing all of these things. You still have 3 hours, but it's important to remember it's like this is all happening within 24 hours. And the working time of that is only like 12 or 13 hours. And if you juggle all of that, that's really crazy. And it kind of makes me think a little bit about how we're taught law and just the way, law works, like legal education and the types of careers it prepares us a little bit for. What is, as you're also a professor, what is your opinion about how legal education can maybe change its pedagogical approaches, the way we're teaching law today, to prepare students a little bit better for these types of general counsel roles, not just for companies that have grown exponentially and are like pretty big now, but also much smaller companies that are just sort of starting out, where lawyers have to also just be innovators rather than just, providing advice and things like that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I think that the traditional universities are still not ahead on this issue. And I'm not saying that my faculty or my university is the best, which is not, but we try to bring technology into our programs. For instance, students at the undergraduate level have a course on law and technology, where they will learn how technology can assist and not replace. I think that's the main idea that I would like to transmit today. So that technology is like a tool that lawyers can use to manage their time, to be more effective, to focus on things that really matters for the activity of being a lawyer. We use like law and technology, we teach fintech, we use some tools, we bring startups and fintech companies and whatever to the classes presenting their products, just to students to have a physical contact with the software, with the tool, and how does that tool help in an activity, as even judges, even courts. We have 5 years ago, we apply for a scholarship, like a funding, in which we try to apply a software application to be used by judges because of compensation for damages in car accidents. Judges, what they do is like a simple math formula, and we try to bring some tech tools assisting the courts in a more fair to apply for a more fair compensation for damages. That's one example. So we have been working a lot on this. We have a master's degree. It's the first master's degree in law and technology in Portugal. It's the only one still. So we have a huge focus on that area because we think that it's the future and we cannot avoid that.
Yeah, cannot agree more. And that's amazing because tech seems to be very integrated just into the just naturally into the law school curriculum. It's curious about the app that the judges were using. Was that developed by the students at Nova, or how did that come about?
Yeah, we it was on we apply in the year that the crisis was here in Portugal, so we didn't get funded on that year, but it was like a partnership between the School of Law and the tech school from Nova. But we're still working on this ramification. Actually, we brought this software, this app. The starting point was a software for doctors, so medical doctors, that they use while doing the diagnostical part of the disease. So you can open your computer and they will ask you, do you feel pain in your shoulder? Yes or no? And then you will answer yes or no. And the result the result will have like 99.8% of accuracy. So just the disease is very rare, ultra rare diseases will not be there. So we try to bring that idea and the algorithm to the compensation scheme that we were applying, but we are still developing that without funding, so it's hard for us to continue.
That's a phenomenal idea, and I really like how the thought process that went into like a more like medical app, and then turning that a little bit into like legal as well. That's amazing. I would be very curious to see how that app works once it launches, and I'm sure it will because that's a tremendous idea. And off late, we've seen integration of tech in the court systems as well. Like I think we all have heard about the Johnny Depp defamation trials, and I just had to bring it up. You can't not bring it up today. And I thought, and I also read that just about a little over a month ago, I was at the conference, the Codex conference at Stanford, and there they were talking about how one of the most difficult places for integration of technology are the courtrooms because they're the slowest ones to change. And we saw this trial, and then there's Kate Moss, Jason Momoa, all on like Zoom, sharing their screen, doing their thing. So we are living in very, very interesting times. And just a thought off of that. How much of this do you think is, just in your opinion, is all of this like affected by COVID-19, where lawyers are becoming more aware that we just got to use Zoom, we just got to automate or rely on tech for our day-to-day work?
So so the question is how COVID-19 changed this environment, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think that we have some positive outcomes and negative outcomes. I would say that the positive ones is that it's easy to schedule meetings, but on the other side, we are in the phase that not now actually, but 6 months ago, we are in a phase of over-scheduling meetings. So it was very hard to be efficient at work because everyone was scheduling e-meetings. But on the other side, I think that the lawyer's activity is very personal. Is still very personal. Your client establishes a relationship with you based on confidence, and confidence sometimes it's easier to establish that relationship if you know the person in person, not in e-meeting. So I think that despite the fact that it's easier to provide services as a lawyer or wherever, like in a law firm or in an in-house lawyer. It's easier to provide services to the clients with technology, and this was like ramped up by COVID-19. But I think that the personal part aspect of the relationship is now is somehow hindered. I don't think that we are now entering another phase. Not that. It depends on the type of confidence that you need to perform with your client. If it's just to sign a contract, or you don't need to. But if you want the client to sign your contract, it's easier to be with him or her physically. But I think that in terms of numbers, the percentage of contracts that were closed during COVID-19 through e-meetings were completely were too much, and still they are too much. Even in the case now, we are living in a phase where we are already in our works. I'm at work, so we're still avoiding physical meetings, which is, of course, it's good, because on one hand, if I have a client in Oporto or Évora, which is a city nearby, now I don't have to go there physically and have a meeting with him or her. It's easy this way. But I remember 5 years ago, if I want to have a meeting here in my meeting room with someone who was not here, we use the phone. And the phone was like in out loud. Everyone was hearing it. And now I can have like meetings, seeing everyone. It's easier and it's effective. But on the positive side as well, I think sharing the screen is also a feature that we didn't think that it was a good way to, for instance, if I want to draft contracts with someone, like 5 years ago, I have my party with me. We sit together and we open, we printed the contract. We're here in the table, drafting in hand which clause we need to amend. And now sharing the screen, it's easier to amend remotely and immediately. So it's more efficient.
Absolutely, yeah. And now there's also those tools that sort of let you redline your documents sort of collaboratively. Like you don't even have to do it synchronously, but it's almost like a Google Doc. Like you can all work on it together. So yeah, totally agree. It is kind of making the legal workflows much more efficient. And also like speaking to the point you were making about this sort of like personal aspect, the personal touch of lawyers, reminds me of this very interesting research paper I'd read a while ago about the types of expertise of lawyers. And it was not like a legal research paper; it was a sociological research paper. And I think they interviewed like over 1,000 lawyers and like their clients and stuff, and they came up with these two concepts. It's the subject expertise, which is of course the black letter of law, knowing that part, knowing your stuff, and then the relational expertise, which is how the lawyer can speak to the judge, or what's the reputation of the lawyer, how the lawyer can talk to a client, and this concept of the lawyer's bedside manner, almost like a doctor, which I thought was a completely crazy concept because I never thought about it. It's like, we're lawyers, like we're not like operating on someone, we're not telling people like bad news, but it's true, lawyers are doing work that does require that sort of personal connection. So yeah, definitely see that, but also opening up more opportunities, like having meetings with people from across the globe and stuff like that. And coming back a little bit towards what you're doing at Paybyrd, I'm curious to hear, what are some of like the biggest areas of like concern, or what are like some of your biggest work areas working in a fintech company like Paybyrd at the General Counsel?
Yeah, I think that I will answer. I will try to answer in general. Of course, I will answer in Paybyrd specifically, but I will try to answer in general. I think that the coordination between teams, it's difficult, especially because we lawyers, we use a specific language, a specific type of communication. And for instance, myself, my background is law firm, so my colleagues were all lawyers. At the university, my colleagues are all professors of law, so it's easy to communicate with them. And when I entered here at Paybyrd, as an in-house lawyer, I had to change a little bit the type of language, the communication, and the words that I was using. Because we lawyers, we are very conceptual. We use specific words for specific cases, and it's different. It's different for them for non-lawyers to understand that language. So what we try here to do is also to train non-lawyers, so the other teams, the legal language first. Second, I think that one of the most challenging aspects as well is to make other teams, so non-lawyers, to understand what time will the legal team spend in a specific task. Sometimes they think that reviewing a contract will take like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, which is not correct. So sometimes we take 2 hours or 3 hours because we need to read everything. We need to think about everything, to think about all the possibilities. So this type of communication between teams, so that they understand that the job of the lawyer sometimes will take more time that a normal person will took reading a contract. It's very challenging. So internally, and I think that externally also one of the main challenges that we have, or I have specifically, is it's the idea that fintech companies will replace somehow traditional financial institutions, like traditional banks. And in the beginning, like in 2018, 17, that was the main concern of traditional banks. But now we are entering in a phase, in my opinion, where so the financial sectors see us, fintech companies, as partners. So we are trying to close partnership agreements with them, avoiding what they usually do is that, okay, these guys are competitors. Let's do two things. Let's try to kill them, or let's try to buy them and integrate them in our companies. But now we are in the phase where fintech companies are seen as a good opportunity for everyone, for the market, but especially for the consumer. And because we are in that phase where the consumer sees fintech companies as a good tool and a more, they have like more relationship. They like to have this close relationship with fintech companies instead of traditional banks because of everything, because of history. We have in here in Portugal, like the biggest bank back in 2015 now is bankrupt. The biggest commercial bank in Portugal was bankrupt. So we have this general idea that banks are not as secure as people think. And it was not the only one. We have two more in on top of that. But and then we have very good opportunities for fintech companies in that sense. But I think that one of the main challenging is the communication, also the external communication with financial institutions. That nowadays, thank God, they are easier during the time.
Yeah. Wow, and I see a lot of parallels also, with legal tech. Legal tech is in a more sort of, I think that's just my opinion. Don't cancel me. But I think legal tech is in a bit more of an initial stage in comparison with fintech, because there is just greater adoption and acceptability of fintech. But the things you're talking about, learning to communicate with teams, not using as much jargon, also, dealing with the more sort of traditional institutions and getting them to accept or, to learn to live with these new types of technologies. It's very interesting. And it seems like you're just wearing a lot of hats, like the manager hat, and then also a little bit of the evangelist hat, I guess, because as a GC, you have to be able to show that sort of accountability to financial institutions, whether that's clients or just anyone in general, about the work that you're doing. Wow, it's a very exciting role, sort of being at the forefront of new technologies. I'm curious to hear your perspective, Miguel, about where do tech tools fit in to your work in particular to make coordinating all of these different hats, wearing all these different hats, a little bit easier for you, while also maybe empowering your other teammates, whether that's like the sales team or the tech team or whatever, to be able to handle some of their work on their own, to be able to understand the legal stuff on their own, so it's not all on the legal department.
Yeah, I think I have like 3 tools. Actually, there are 2 tools that I think they are the most important ones. In my opinion, contract management tools are the main thing. Let me give you an example. We were now closing an agreement with one of the biggest airlines in Europe, and they told us, "Oh, please, let's not establish in the contract a clause in which the contract will be automatically renewable during time." And I asked, "But why?" And they told me, "Oh, because we have like 2,000 agreements, different agreements with different duration dates, and it will be crazy for us to manage all those agreements. So what we do," they told us, the airline, "what we do is to put in the client the obligation. It's not an obligation. It's like the burden to when the contract is almost terminating, tell us, okay, do you want to renew the contract?" And I asked, "Okay, but why don't you have like a software tool where instantly you have your automatically the system will tell you, okay, this contract will be automatically renewable in 90 days. Do you want to make a call, a termination call or not?" Right? So I think the contract management tool is the most important thing. Not only for that, for commercials. If I have what traditionally we have is like the commercial goes to the legal team and asks, "Okay, I have these specific clauses that I would like to include in the contract to be signed with the client," and then the legal team will insert that. And if we have a software where the commercial team just need to place the specific provisions or the duration or whatever type of clauses in the contract, and automatically the contract will be ready to sign, it will be easier. It will be easier. But not only for that, also for the life of the contract. So for duration clauses, for indemnifications, for I don't know. For instance, we in Paybyrd we rent POS terminals. POS terminals where you pay, we rent them. But for a certain type of clients, if the client wants like 1,000 POS, we will of course apply a more interesting fee for the client. So the fees will change. The fees will change. A software where we can see specifically for that client what are those fees, how can we invoice the clients, whatever, would be easier. So I think contract management tools for the whole organization, but not only for clients, also internally, for an employment agreements, for the staff agreements, will be also good for us to have like one software tool, everything. So I think this is one aspect. The other tool that I think that legal tech that I'm most excited on this is tools that can help us drafting contracts. And actually at the law school we have like former students, which are also now former senior lawyers, who are working on the tools in which on a tool in which we are drafting a document on the Word, and then if I would like to add like a force majeure clause or whatever, termination clause, automatically it will open a tool on a box where I can have not only standard clause on the same matter, but in addition to that, applicable law for that, and also case law relevant for that clause. So it's hard to keep up with this because you need to be updated all the time. But a tool that can help lawyers drafting their clauses accurately, it will be also a great tool for us.
Yeah, of course. It could just save you hours and hours of that time, like shuffling between both internal as well as the client contracts. And yeah, I can only imagine like with a company that's growing very, very fast and getting huge, every single day, the internal contracts must be huge as well because you're hiring more people. You're also doing more work, as you get larger. You also have to, of course, you have to worry about this from the get-go, but the stakes get even higher to protect the data of clients, for example. And that leads me a little bit to my next question, which is about just data privacy, because fintech has a lot of fintech companies often use a lot of data that is very sensitive and that's very, very important to protect. As within the in-house legal, what are some of like the biggest, maybe the top three, if you want to name them or itemize them, the top three like maybe data privacy concerns that you're always looking out for your company?
Yeah, I think you can say that there are the three. The one is the level of accuracy of the activity of collecting data from our clients. Because if you need to comply with the GDPR rules, sometimes we cannot collect everything. So we need to be very careful which type of data are we collecting. That's the first concern and needs to be addressed very carefully. Because clients now are very sensitive to that. If you ask for data that actually you are not allowed to do it, or not allowed, or it's doubtful if you can ask, they will be very sensitive nowadays. So I don't give it. You don't have permission for that. So we need to be very careful addressing the level of accuracy on that matter. Secondly, the storage of data. So we need to secure carefully the data from our clients in softwares that are well designed and well protected. And then fintech companies sometimes it depends on the level of services that we provide. But sometimes fintech companies will collect data from clients and then transfer data for financial institutions that usually are enrolled in some transactions, right? And this process of transfer data to the financial institutions also needs to be addressed very carefully. So I would say accuracy of collecting the activity of collecting data, the storage of data, and then the responsibility of safely transfer data to third parties that are enrolled and in legal terms it's lawful to transfer data for that third parties. So these three activities are the top concerns that we have nowadays in our country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Just very curious about data privacy in general. Thanks for outlining that. And going back to our discussion just about like integrating tech tools and thinking of lawyers as innovators. I want to ask you, what are some of the, of course, without revealing too many details or anything or any sensitive information, can you tell us like the one time that you had to really think very quickly on your feet, whether that's your current role or earlier, and you had to like innovate a solution just sort of on the go?
I don't know if I quite understood the question. Sorry.
Yeah. I was just asking if there's like an instance, just connecting back to our discussion about innovation for lawyers as well, and not just engineers. It's a lot to innovate within like the legal system as well. I was asking if you could share maybe an experience you had where you had to come up with a very innovative legal solution, very, very sort of quickly.
A very innovative legal solution. In terms of so a legal solution, not a commercial one. So not to conclude an agreement. Just the way that we rearrange a contract. Is that the question?
Yeah. Either would work.
Either will work. So I will tell both. The first one on the commercial part. I remember once we have been working with a counterparty who actually was in Angola. We were in Portugal, and the counterparty was in Portugal. And this was a transaction where we were trying to buy movable property, I guess, in Angola. And they were selling, so the counterparty were selling. And we were in Portugal. And we had like a huge discussion on a clause. It was like 6:00, and we have a huge discussion on a clause that for us, it was very important to conclude. And then and the counterparty did not speak with us face to face. So we were in the same meeting room and face to face to the counterparty. And the counterparty did not speak with us. So it speak to his lawyer. We hear everything, of course, and then the lawyer just speak with us. It was like a crazy communication scheme. But then we were like, okay, we need to close this agreement, and we need this clause, this text to be as it is right now. Otherwise, it's not possible to finish the transaction. And then we realized that the counterparty was nervous because of the flight that he has at 6 a.m. To Angola. And we were like, okay, let's be here, say nothing, and wait until the time that he needs to go and he needs to conclude the agreement. So let's pressure him just being here all the time, waiting for he to accept. And we were like between 4:00, because 4:00 started the meeting, and 4 a.m. in the same meeting room, like this, doing and it was like 4:00, and he get out of the room. He asked for a lawyer to assist him, and they say something back, and they return, and the lawyer said, okay, my client needs to go to Angola. He says that he will sign the contract like this. Let's go. So it was one of the main. It was like crazy. It was like 5 hours in the same meeting room, saying nothing to no one, like this, waiting for the contract.
It's like the silent treatment. That's amazing.
So the legal part story, it actually is very recent. So what we have is like in law we have. In Portuguese law, but I think it's the same in other jurisdictions. We have a personal and direct responsibility, and then subsidiary responsibility. And subsidiary responsibility means that if you don't go to the person who is directly liable, you will claim for the second person. But we have in Portugal other words that we can use, which is not very common, but traditionally it's more back in the days that we use to say the same thing. For instance, direct responsibility and subsidiary responsibility. And the client would like to have the subsidiary responsibility, and we don't like to have this subsidiary responsibility. We would like to have direct responsibility from the client. So what we do is we change the words to this old traditional way that no one knows, just people that are in academia, so that they could accept direct responsibility. I know that this is not fair, but actually we use that in books. So we say, okay, so if we change direct responsibility to this expression, it's not a Latin expression. It's like, do you accept? And the client said, yes, we accept. I said, okay, be careful, it's the same, but okay, if you accept, that's great. So we use traditional old expressions to replace new ones, to help us with this clause. That I was thinking on another case, but I don't recall anyone. No.
And those two stories are great. I really like the silent treatment story. I think that was just like a perfect example of that personal touch that lawyers can have, just thinking in that moment. And for the second experience as well, just also emphasizes just the importance of drafting and legal language, and how important it is, not just your own legal team, but for everyone else to understand the implication of all of those words. Thanks so much for sharing them, and very innovative solutions. You can't just learn that in law school, of course, unless they do like a separate course on innovation, which you're already doing at NOVA, like integration of law and tech, which I really appreciated hearing. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, Miguel. I'm very confident that under your leadership, the Paybyrd's legal department is just going to flourish, with innovative solutions, and keep moving faster and faster every day. And thanks so much for participating in the podcast. The conversation was very insightful. I'm sure our listeners really appreciated tuning in. And thanks so much for our listeners. Thanks for your interest in legal tech. Thanks for following Rethinking Legal Ops. We're here every week, every Thursday, just right around this time. So tune in for our next episode next week on June 9th, which is a very special one with Colin Levy. Thanks so much for tuning in again. And
thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.